Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today, my guest is Lindsey Scharmyn. Before I bring her on, a couple of announcements. Forbidden Knowledge News is asking for your help. Now, we're doing everything we can to correct our revenue situation, but our podcast host is once again causing major issues with our ad revenue. Now, I'm hoping they correct the issue as they did before, but it also took months for them to do so. We're also planning on filming a documentary this summer, which we need funding to finish. Due to our current situation, the only way I can keep bringing you shows and produce our documentary is with your help. Now, if you'd like to leave a donation to help us out, those links are right there in the description. We have a custom URL with a Buy Me a Coffee, and we have a PayPal option. You can also help us by getting a reading from October. Just email her at theancientgift222@gmail.com. And trust me, guys, I really hate asking for donations, and as soon as we get this figured out, which we will soon, you won't hear me asking anymore. You can always also get Forbidden Knowledge News on all podcast platforms, Rokfin, Odysee, and now Rumble. And you can now get Forbidden Knowledge News on Minds.com. Minds is decentralized. It's censorship-free. It's an amazing platform for video and social media, and you don't have to worry about getting banned for telling the truth. Just click the link in the description, and you can join right now. Guys, check out Rokfin. Rokfin is where you get all our premium content. You also get all the premium content and free content from every creator that's on Rokfin. Our website is forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We've got some amazing podcasts there from our wonderful community. Please be sure and give them some love. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are right in the description. Finally, check out C60 Purple Power. C60 may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. The benefits have been personally amazing. Check them out for yourself. And you can now get sexy lube. That's right. Get sexy with C60 Sexy Lube. Need I say more? Just click that link in the description. You can get 10% off your order plus free shipping. Today I want to welcome back to the show Lindsey Scharmyn. She is host of Rogue Ways podcast, author of 4 books, educator, and national board-certified teacher with a master's in teaching. She is also a spiritualist and experiencer of other realms via astral travel, dream walking, visions, and interaction with other dimensional entities. Lindsey, welcome back, and how you doing?
I am fantastic, Chris. How are you?
I'm excellent. Always great to talk to you. And you have yet another book out which we'll be discussing today. And this book, like your other books, have been channeled. And this is so interesting to me. I think we've briefly discussed this on previous shows. But could you tell us about how you found out that you could channel information and how this first started happening, and from who or what is the information coming from?
I love all those questions, and hopefully I remember them all.
I'll remind you if you don't.
Interesting is the more. Yeah, thank you. What's really interesting is I think that I've always been doing this, and I think that most people who find their sort of spiritual gifts, of which we all have many, have realized at some point that they've always been doing them. It's just that it's so like natural and automatic that you kind of reject it as a possibility that is something special or beyond the sort of material realm. And so the more I think back, the more I realize when I was a child, I was always receiving information that was from beyond me, and people would just think I was very, very smart. And I'm not saying I'm not smart, but I'm saying like that wasn't coming from me actually back then. Even I just didn't know. I just thought this was like what everyone experiences and does. I have this story about taking this test, the GREs. If anyone's done grad school, you know what the GREs are like, this super hard test. Everyone's stressed about it. And, it's like the SAT on steroids. And I went into the GRE and I was like, I'm just going to try it because I know the math part's going to be really hard for me. I did like calculus and stuff, but I wasn't like amazing at it. It was very difficult for me. And so this is beyond calculus. And so I'm taking this test and and they get harder each question, right? Each question gets harder and harder. So the first three, I'm like, okay, I could figure those out. When we get to the fourth one, I'm like, I literally don't even know what this symbol means. So I have no idea what's going on now by the fourth question. I think there's like 20 or 15 questions. So I'm like, well, I failed this. So I just started clicking buttons. I was like, D, C, A, B. Like I'm just not even looking at the answers or the question at all, knowing that I wouldn't know the answers. I got out of the test and it's electronically scored. And I walked out and the guy goes, oh my God. And I was like, what? And he's like, you're a genius. And I was like, oh, ha, ha. And he's like, no, I've never seen this high of a score on the math section. And I was like, shut up. He's like, no, look. And I got like a 700 or something, which is like the highest score you can get. I had a like nearly perfect score on this test that I literally guessed, but I look back at even that and the letters were being like spoken into my mind and I was just clicking them. And so I got into grad school because I have this ability or this skill. So I just didn't notice it. I just didn't think about it. And eventually I was starting to write. And on my first book, I was just talking to someone one night and I was saying, it would be really cool if there was a book like this. Like I would like to read a book like this, but I haven't found a book like this book about our really, really ancient history that's beyond records, that, the golden age or Atlantis or whatever we want to call it, but that's like realistic and like, what it actually would have been like to live in it. And someone was like, well, why don't you write that book then? And I was like, I can't write fiction. And right when I said that, I like what people describe as like a download, I like suddenly there was not just that book, but a trilogy just like in my head instantly. And I was like, whoa, like I felt it come in. I saw it in its full form and I started scrambling to write out the notes of it. So before I forgot, because it was like perfectly formed as it was. And I was like, this is crazy. I was like, maybe I'm supposed to write this book. So I sat, even though I don't know how to write fiction. I've always written nonfiction. I've always done like articles and essays and, those types of things, memoirs, like real life stuff. I've never written fiction. I've read a lot of fiction. I'm a literary person, so I understand it, but I don't technically know how to write it. And I've always been so weirded out that people can do it at all. Like Lord of the Rings and George Martin and like these people, I'm like, how do you do this? This like huge world where everything connects. Like, how did you see all that when you started? And anyway, so I just was pretty sure I couldn't do it, but this hit me, these 3 books fully formed. And so I sat down to start writing them one day and it would just come into my mind. Like, here's this scene, here's these characters and here's what they're doing. Here's what they look like. Here's where they're at. And I would just start describing it. And I was like, oh, maybe this is way easier than I thought. And then I just every day I'd sit down to write more and it would just come into my head. And I would not know in between. I wouldn't be like, what's going to happen next? Or what am I going to have them do next? Or why is it going to? No, I would just sit down and it would just come through. And even then I did not think that I was channeling because I had a huge aversion to that word and that culture. And so I still didn't think it. But by the end of that first book that I wrote, this is Sine Curve of Aeons, Vitalis is the name of the book. And by the end of it, I saw all of these things happen in the book that I then later found out were real in real life that I had not known about previously. So I was being taught about real things by receiving these visions and images that were then being translated into this book. So it's not exactly how other people describe or define channeling in that way, at least at that time, but it was very similar, right? And then I was starting to see, actually, I've always done this. When I write poetry, it just plops into my head and I just write it out and there it is. Now there's a poem, right? Now I was doing it for these huge fictional novels. And finally, most recently, the Key of Transformational Healing came to me. It's very short, unlike in most of my other books. It's only 70 pages, but I was driving along and my phone popped up with a notification, like a reminder, just like you would for an appointment, like you need to go to the doctor in an hour. And it said, consider writing the Key of Transformational Healing. And I was like, what? Like, who put this reminder in my phone. I surely didn't. If I did, I don't have any memory of it. And I don't drink or anything. There's no reason I should have no memory of anything that I'm doing these days. So I don't know where it came from. So I was like, oh, this is like something is telling me to write this book called The Key of Transformational Healing, I guess. So I was like, maybe I'm just supposed to sit down, just like I did with that fictional book, and see what comes out. And this time it was a lot more like what people traditionally describe as channeling, where I would sit down and I was like, I don't even know what this book is supposed to be. I just titled it The Key of Transformational Healing. All right, what you got? And just words would start coming through. And I was just typing. And then I'd go back and read it and go, whoa. Like, what? What is this? There's stuff in here that I've talked about before. There's stuff in here that I had, like, I have a background, like my own encounters with some of this information. And then there's some stuff where I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, what is this? So it blew my own mind. And then I finally was done with it. And now it's in physical form for anybody to read as well. And I think your last part of that question was who or what is it coming from? And they call themselves, I'm not gonna be able to find it, but the one time they see it I say they, I don't know if it's like a being or multiple beings, but they refer to themselves as our spiritual ancestors. And I've since started describing the beings that I seem to have also been interacting with my whole life that people would call UFOs. I've since started calling them our spiritual ancestors, and I believe they're one and the same. And it's very different from, when people talk about our physical ancestors, there's like other human beings, right? Or maybe all the way back to other types of hominids, who knows, depending on what you believe in. But that's our physical ancestry, right? That's in our DNA. And our spiritual ancestors, like, that's a bit of a different concept. And then I just started thinking about what are our spiritual ancestors? It actually makes a lot of sense to me the more I think about it. Like, how many people have you talked to on your show or just in life who have like, I don't think I come from here. Like, I just feel like an alien or something. Like, I feel like or they're like, I think I came here on a mission. Like, I'm here to do this and be this in the world. And I think they're the same sorts of descriptions for the same sort of phenomenon where, like, maybe your soul literally did come from a different place in time. You're here in a physical body, and so you have this physical ancestry as a part of your makeup here, but spiritually, like, maybe you came from somewhere else into this place. So I think that's who this is wherever a lot of us seem to have been coming from for this time and place.
That's really interesting. Now, first, was it be considered cheating, channeling to get through grad school? I don't know. Yes. Yeah, you think so? Ah, damn.
I did.
Oh, well.
But I clearly was supposed to become a teacher or something. I wasn't going to get in otherwise.
That's crazy. All right, so there are some things that I've done, like when I used to write music a lot. I would just sit down, and if I would think about it and try to write the thing, it would never fucking work. But if I just let go and just start blah, 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 within a few minutes, I'd have like a whole song written that I'd just kind of feel through, and I'd be like, where did this come from? And I've done it recently, writing a few things, some creative writing that I've done, some writing for my presentation that I did recently. It just kind of, if I would think about it, I couldn't do it. No way. But if I would just let go and kind of just start writing, shit would come out. So I think that probably everybody might have this ability. They just don't know how to access it, right?
Yes, that's what my whole mission is, to waken people to their skills, because people constantly do this. They're like, oh, that person's psychic and they're very special and they were chosen or something. And I'm like, no, you are too, actually. It's just that most of us have all of these blockages built up in between us and that. Because we're all here, we're all alive, we all have a soul, we're all spiritually, present, more or less. But maybe we have emotional traumas that are sort of taking precedence. And so we're acting out like aggressions and whatever. And so that's not going to get you in alignment with your spiritual self. It will once you heal it, get it out of the way. But then we also have these mindsets, right? We're like, I'm not that. I can't do that. I'm not special. I don't have that ability. Those are also blocking us from doing this. So a big part of it is to just realize, there's no human being that has anything that you don't have. I mean, technically. And so, we all have different proclivities. Like, I might be better at writing. You're better at music. I probably can't channel a song through. You maybe can't channel. I don't know. Right. But but we both have that thing we can tap into, and both of us can have it come out, and everybody can. I don't know if you remember, if you ever saw this book, the Conversations with God.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's a super good book if anybody wants to read it. It's very helpful for people, but he also, and I don't know if he calls it channeling. I don't know what he calls it, but supposedly the story is he was like so angry at like the world and people and where we're all at. And he just started writing like, who's God anyway, if this is what the world is like, and like, whatever, why is things like this and blah. And he started getting an answer. And he started getting answers. So he kept writing questions and he kept getting answers. And so this book is just his questions and his answers. And it goes through everything that you might actually ask God if you had this, channel open too. And it's actually a really good book. And I just, so he didn't necessarily have the like background in writing to do it as a fictional novel or as a like manual or whatever the key of transformational healing is, but he had the ability to do it as a question and answer sort of like interview. And so that's how it came through for him. He wasn't even expecting it. I just think it can come through in so many ways for so many people at so many times for so many reasons. It might even come through for like flower arranging. I don't know. If that brings joy and truth into the world, like why not?
Right. And well, also for me, my personal truth is that it comes through big time when I use plant medicines like psychedelics or magic mushrooms. Man, some of the information I get is so profound, and I do feel like, profoundly connected to what some people might call source, and the information that I'm asking is so profound about that. It's just, I think there are different ways of accessing it. Plant medicine may be one of them, for my personal truth, but that's so interesting. Let's start talking about your book. Give us, after, reading your own book to find out probably what the hell it was about, what was it about?
Well, first, I also want to say plant medicines totally have that channel, especially when they're used in that intention. Like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to like be in this space, I'm going to see what I can get. But isn't it sometimes, don't you find that like what came through is like so big and so complex that you like
it takes months sometimes to unpack it. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think that's a lot of what people encounter too when they're, especially if you're asking and you're receiving the answers. Sometimes the answers are like, I literally don't even understand. Like it's, and so there's like all these different ways that I say they try to like show you, okay, well then look at it from this angle. Like here's a smaller piece. What about that? I just think it's so interesting. So whatever that information source is far, far beyond our brain and our ability to conceive sometimes. But the book, it's really about you. It's actually what we were just talking about, that everybody actually has this inside of them. And, I'll read you the first little part because it really encapsulates the entire book. It says, a key is inside of you. It always has been there. You will find it now. It is not something you have to do consciously. You can simply know it is there. And as time goes on, your path emerges in more and more clarity. You will find you have always known it, have always been using it, and that there is no locked gate that could ever stop you. Not here and not anywhere. And it just, that's just the beginning. And it goes on to actually describe ways that you can be in deeper touch with it, like actual practices that you can do to like invite it more concretely into your being. The ways to look at what's happening, because we all have sort of similar blockages about, well, then why is the world so shitty? If everybody has this spiritual channel, like why is there evil? Why are there people who do those things? And what are we supposed to do about it? And, or it even addresses some of that stuff where people are like, oh, my spiritual gifts, I don't charge money for them because I'm better than you. And like that kind of bullshit, all of those things are in this book. So it's like a guidebook and a manual to discover this in yourself, to invite it, to engender it, to keep it growing within yourself, and also ways of dealing with the material reality we all live in that are maybe a little bit more helpful than what we've been doing. So it's pretty cool. And like I said, it's very short. Like I love, because I thought like, oh, this is going to be a saga. I'm going to be writing this for like 4 years. It's going to be some kind of, nope. It's like 70 pages. It's very easy to read and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I want to kind of go over some of the concepts in your book. One of the things you talk about is jumping far and fast in the cosmic center versus where we're actually located. So tell us about that. What is that?
Yeah, there's this part in it where they say like you jumped far and fast. You went really far. And I saw it while they were saying it, that it was like this black hole almost, or something, this like expanse of nothingness that was crossed by who or whatever to come to Earth, to get to Earth. And it almost felt like Earth was this like pregnant possibility, but there wasn't really life or soul there. And then something with life and soul like was like, I'm going there. And they were like, whoa, don't jump. And they went anyway. And now we're here doing this. And that's maybe why, they don't go into as much detail as I'm conceiving of it in my head and explaining right now, but that's just how it felt when it was coming through and they were sharing this with me.
Right.
That this is part of why we're still evolving here and why things are still exceptionally chaotic, because it's still like coming forth from this place that didn't have it before. So it's like we're seeding intelligence and soul and spirit and connection here, where before maybe it was just material that had the ability to have that occur, but wasn't yet, So if you think about like birthing pangs or like making a child, like it's not easy. It actually like sucks nutrients from the mother. It's like a parasite, like it's really difficult. And then you have to like actually push it out, and it's like super hard. And I think about that here with all of this crap we're going through and all of the darkness and what seems so horrible and difficult is like, maybe that's it, maybe it's our spiritual birthing pangs. And this is just a difficult thing to create in the universe if it wasn't already there. And when they said the cosmic center, or I think they even called it the cosmic gestalt. And I also saw this center, and I think you may have had a similar experience, Chris, because I remember we talked about it before, but I don't remember exactly what you saw. But one of the early experiences I had was these spiritual ancestors seeming to take me on a seeming ship really, really far away.
Right.
And when I looked out and they were showing me, they were like, look, there's the cosmic center. They didn't call it that. They just said like, look, there's everything. And it was like this, like all this light and stars and universes and galaxies, like seemingly going around an actual center, but in two directions. It was like a figure 8. Right. And it was like this massive cluster of probably life, intelligence, like who knows how advanced of civil, I don't know. And then they were like, and you're over here. And it was like the edge. It was like way farther out from that. And they're like, that's where Earth is in the Milky Way. And then we went back home and did other things. But I always remember that, like, why are we so far away? Like, we're way, way, way out there. Is this like the super boonies? And after reading that in this book, The Key of Transformational Healing, I'm like, I think that's exactly, they showed me that for a reason, so that when I came to this moment, was writing this, I would really get like how far out we are and how far away we are from that cosmic center. And yeah.
Well, I know. I know we talked about the nature of space before versus what we're being told, and I've heard things like the cosmic center. What does this mean to you, especially seeing that we don't know? I don't know what space is. I have different growing, I guess, opinions and thoughts about what space actually is, and if we can go there, if we've gone. I know everything that NASA tells us is a lie, so it's like, where do we go from there with the information? What is your idea of what the cosmic center and space in general is?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's why I said, like, they seemed to take me on a ship and we seemed to go far away, because I don't know that we actually went anywhere. And I definitely don't feel like I was in an actual ship. I feel like that was the conceptualization I could understand at the time, right? Of just how far it sort of is. And I have this equal and opposite construct in my mind of almost like a nervous system, right? And the cosmic center might be like the heart or the brain. It's like here's where all the energy's really happening, right? But then we have like a nerve pathway that goes like all the way down to your toe, right? And at the very tip of that, and like what connects them? Well, it's really like the energy, and what is space then? Well, it's just like I guess.
Well, that's an interesting synchronicity you just said, because yesterday I had Todd Armstrong on, and he believes that like the cosmos, the galaxy is like a giant being, and we may be in a section near the heart or something, and it's all cells and living I guess entities that's all put together in this one massive collective entity. I don't know. That's interesting though.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's even exactly it either, but it
Right.
seems to be more likely than that. And, and then space would be like what? I don't know, the space between molecules, the space between cells, right? Or something like that. And should we even go out into it and try to get to another place? I don't know why. I just think we should do whatever we're doing here might be like more effective. And then I think about these entities or these intelligences as like the, I don't know, the information that being is sending out to like its toe or wherever to be like, hey, toe, like stop destroying yourself or try to grow here, and we're like, we like cancer. Or like, oh, wait, maybe we don't want cancer in this place actually. So it could be any of those things. And I just try to not be too attached to it because it doesn't matter to me. Like the essence of it, of what matters is that we're life, and that we can do it better and more easily when we know that we are that, and we stop being lost in these things that don't matter as much, like what actually are these entities. I don't care anymore because I know that they only have, I shouldn't say only because there may be like negative ones right out there, but these ones that I've been interacting with, at least, they only have love and hope and helpfulness for us, and that's cool. Like, you can be my friend if that's what you're all about.
Yeah, and I've experienced the same thing, and I've come to learn that it's my guides as well that I have these conversations and information comes from, and they have nothing but the best intention for me. The first thing that they wanted me to get to the bottom of was childhood traumas that I didn't even know I had. They're like, you got to take care of this, brother. And I'm like, what? Just crazy stuff like that. And that is indeed what I needed to take care of, and I did. And it's like so rewarding after that. So yeah, these beings definitely have your best interests, at least the ones we're communicating with.
Yes, right. And again, maybe there's others, but maybe the others too might even have your best interest in mind, right? Like, I've had encounters with things that seem demonic to me, even still to this day. But I look back at that and I'm like, if that didn't happen, I would not be here where I'm at right now. And where I'm at right now is the healthiest and most well I've ever been. So was it good or was it bad? I mean, it had a good effect actually in the end. So that might have even been, someone once said, like, what if that was your guides or your angels sort of like dressed up as the boogeyman to like scare you into going the right direction? I'm like, they would do that, wouldn't they? They could do that.
What if that's all evil? It's just good dressed up to get us in going in the right direction. That's been a thought as well. That goes deep. That's a whole show by itself. But speaking of evil, and you also write about evil being recycled. What does this mean?
Yeah, this is this interesting concept, and it actually came to me before the book actually came together, but it was clarified in the book in ways that were really beautiful. And everyone can relate to this in this sort of concept of that, when something dies, you put it in the earth, right? Like, let's say a little squirrel dies or something, you put them in the earth. Well, what happens? Like, maggots come and like little like microbes come, and they're like eating the flesh, and it looks really disturbing to us. And we're like, ew, gross. Like, I don't want to see that or touch that or be around that. And at the same time, you would not like this world if it were full of the billions and billions of squirrels that had died because they didn't get decomposed and they were just littering the whole, right? As well as all the other animals and beings and things that have died. So when you come down to it, like, is the maggot gross, or is the little bacteria gross? Is it bad? It looks gross to you. You don't like it. It's not pleasant, but it's actually very necessary. And it's removing something that's no longer purposeful in the world, right? And so it's going to go serve a different purpose now. And I'd actually start to look at like all sort of dark things and negative things in this way, right? When people are like, oh, you've got
that's kind of what we were just talking about, right?
Right. Yeah. And people have like succubus or incubus or these things, and they're like, why is this attached to me? And I'm like, because you have a ton of sexual energy you're just shooting out. And it's like, oh, I'll eat that, right? Yeah, that's a good snack for me. And if it didn't, where would that energy go? Like, it might become even more destructive. So even that might just have a purpose. That might just be what it does. And nature seems to always have an answer for everything. It's like, oh, there's too much of that. Well, here's this thing that's going to come and balance that again. And like, oh, there's too little of that. Well, here's this thing that's going to come bring more balance to that too. So I started to see that, and I started to think, darkness has a purpose. What we call evil has a purpose. And in the book, The Key of Transformational Healing, it started talking about how actually, if you as a soul, because you have free will, if you were like, you know what, I'm going to see what it's like to just murder against people's will and just like take their life from them, or worse things, right? I'm going to torture them, or I'm going to rape them, or whatever else. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for a lot. And then the next life I come back, like, I don't know, maybe my karma was such that now I'm experiencing that. Well, my reaction to that is going to be to go do it more. I'm not even angrier, and I'm even worse. I'm even deeper in this hole now. And now I have even more karma. And then you get to whatever lifetime, and it's like, do you even have a chance at this point of dealing with all that energy you created in a way that can allow you to be constructive and productive again? And if you don't, wouldn't it be a torture to you if the universe said, too bad, you're going to continuously forever go that direction in the karmic cycle, and you're just going to forever build more and more and more heaviness to yourself and darkness to yourself and less chance that you can get out of it? That would be actually a torture. That would be an unnaturally inefficient way for nature to deal with the energy you've created. Instead, What I was being shown and told is that you actually then like descend down into whatever, you can call it hell if you want, but it's a place where your energy then gets to be taken apart, disassembled, and recycled and used as the raw materials and components for something new to grow. And you, maybe as a consciousness, don't get to exist in that form anymore, but as a part of the larger consciousness, you still exist. You just come back in a different way, and you get to start over, really, and it's fresh. And I'm like, this just makes sense. Like, it just makes sense. That just is how nature works. There would always be an answer, and there would always be a way. You're not going to just turn into like this black hole of death, evil, and constantly like create more and more of that. There's going to be an answer to bring balance to it instead.
That's so interesting. And there's like balance and layers within layers of doing that very thing, like within yourself, within your own journey, going through, say, the death of old systems and learning that you've been lied to your whole life, and the awakening process. It's all kind of like a death and rebirth process within a death and rebirth process, and it's all connected. And like you were saying, there's special, I guess you could say, entities or energies that have their own little jobs in this reality or existence to keep everything in balance, which would make sense, right?
Right. Like the machine elves, like when they have a job, right? Like there's a reason why everybody sees them when they do DMT. There's something they're doing, and that's their specific, like that's what they're best at, and that's what brings things into good balance in that place. I don't know what it is. I don't really understand them, but I'm sure they're doing a great job at it.
Right on. Yeah. There's plenty of strange like entities I've seen, and doing psychedelics, and it seems that they're all part of a natural order of something, even like the scariest things that I've encountered. That's very interesting. And speaking of interdimensional beings or possible UFOs, you mentioned earlier that you have a different understanding of what UFOs are, especially the ones that you've encountered throughout your life, right?
Right. And it's hard because I think people get really attached. Again, they get really attached to what space is. They get really attached to the shape of the earth. They get really attached to all this stuff. And I'm always like, hey, have that attachment, I guess, and have that idea, but just have somewhere in you that wonders if that really is the final answer. Right. And at least like allow yourself to question it. And UFOs is one of these things where people get really attached. They're like, no, it is a ship. They are aliens. They're from this system. They're physical beings. And this is what they're doing here. And I'm like, I guess maybe. I have not personally encountered that before. I don't have any personal information that supports that. And instead, what I have are literally thousands of occurrences of interacting with these things in the sky that look like what people say UFOs are. They're lights, they're flashing, they're doing weird things, right? And they're psychically able to communicate. If you ask them a question in your mind, they can answer it and respond to you. Even if you don't feel like you can receive messages or understand what they are, you could just say something like, hey, if you are not a plane, will you flash red right now? Or I guess red would be a bad color because that's what a lot of them flash, but like flash blue or something, flash green, whatever they're not already flashing, or do it 4 times in a row and then stop for 5 seconds or something, right? And ask them and see. And if they respond to you, like, these are something other than planes. They're seemingly something other than physical beings. I've seen them transform into other shapes in front of my eyes. And so if they're physical, that would be very advanced technology. Mm-hmm. It would be very advanced to suddenly be able to instantly change shapes and forms physically. I'm not saying that couldn't happen. So I still have an open mind. I'm saying maybe they are physical. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what physical means, but it seems to me that they're energy, that that's why they can move anywhere, anytime. That's why they can change shapes and change their appearance. That's why they can easily communicate, what in a way we call psychically. And so they're not physical beings. So if they're not physical beings and they're just energy beings, then I start to think like, well, what's the difference between that and what people call angels or demons or maybe even ghosts? I guess ghosts are actually people who died, but that type of energy or that type of being, that's something that we can see and perceive, but isn't physical. So then I start to just say, okay, they're interdimensional beings, then, because I also don't know if they're literally coming from another planet. It doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be the case that they can move in time, move in space, and those are dimensions, right? So they're interdimensional beings of energy that can communicate with us in that way, at least. And this would also answer when people are like, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn, come out and say, here's our treaty with Earth or whatever? Like, well, would you do that if you were an energy being that's interdimensional? Do you even have paper? Right? No, I don't think you do.
Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth with the physical versus interdimensional. I mean, maybe it's possible that there is both. I've only experienced the non-physical interdimensional type of contact, and many people I have as well, but also on the other spectrum, many people have experienced a very physical experience and claim to have been physically taken, claims to have had experiences with very physical beings. Recently I've been talking with a gentleman who claims to channel a very physical, reptilian race that has interactions and can manifest physically. So I don't know. I don't claim to know. I think that there is a wide spectrum of high strange phenomenon, and it's very possible that there are physical beings maybe coming visit us, whether it's interdimensionally or from different planets, whatever. I just think our world is a lot weirder than we would ever know.
Yes. No, I'm totally with you with that. And I also have had experiences that I can only describe as abduction experiences, and have had things that I can only describe as implants. And so something physical has happened to me. But I also I'm always of the mind that like, that seems to me like it's humans playing really advanced games, and that it's human tech but I don't know. Like you said, I'm with you. It very well could be that there are physical beings from other places here. I'm not against it. I just I don't have enough evidence to think that that's what's going on so far.
Right. And when our own government and media starts pushing that, that this is a physical phenomenon, and they're throwing, little drone ships that are 100% ours, like in showing TR-3Bs, this is all our stuff. And the government's obviously lying to us about a lot of this stuff, but why are they getting involved in it, and why now? So I don't trust any of it. I keep an eye on it, but it's very interesting, and I think very deceptive at the same time.
Yes, I'm with you. It's because imagine what you can do with people if they believe that there are these physical aliens and that they're better than us and more advanced than us, and that, like, I don't know, maybe they're here to save the world from global climate change or whatever. Well, now you're going to do whatever they say. You're going to fall into line with whatever agenda because they're better than us. They're from so far away. They have the technology. Their civilization made it through whatever cataclysms. And it's like the perfect guise to roll in any agenda you want, actually.
Yeah, it is. We live in very fascinating times, don't we?
Yes.
All right. So you also write in a new book about the 5 elements versus 5 chakras and the connections there. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, this was always fascinating for me because I was just introduced to the 5 chakra system a few years ago by one of my teachers. And I was like, wait, there's 7 chakras. And it's like, oh, in this tradition, there's 5. And I realized, oh, there's all these different traditions of how many chakras you have and like which ones matter and why. And then I thought and learned about acupuncture. Acupuncture is basically all these meridians and intersections. Those are all little chakras too. And then I realized, oh, we actually have like hundreds of chakras. So when people talk about chakras, we have this very limited view of what it is. And in the 5 chakra system, what I find really interesting, so you have one in your head, you have one in your throat, you have one in your heart, you have one in your abdomen, and you have one at your root. And when you look at the 7 chakra system, those are actually the highlights of it as well. In fact, there's just 2 in your head and 2 in your abdomen, but they're kind of the same. There's not a lot of difference between those 2 in each of those spots. They're very, very similar, at least. And so in the 5 chakra system, it's like a little bit more condensed and straightforward. And I like that. And then in this book, when it was telling about how each of these 5 chakras is connected with one of the 5 elements, I was like, oh my God, of course it is. Like, of course it is. There's 5 elements, and we have these like 5 main centers, and each one of them is for one of those elements. That's the element that it is the most connected with, the energy of that element. And the element, you could think about it as like this physical thing, like earth, air, fire, water, like those are all stuff we can actually touch and see. But the essence of the element, like the energy of it, the information of it, the type of movement it has, or those are more like this symbolic, energetic level of those elements. And that's what you can then start to identify in your 5 chakras, right? So your root chakra is your densest. And this all aligns with the 7 chakra system as well, right? It's not different. Your root chakra is the densest. It's the one that has to do with survival and material stuff. And so it's earth, right? Earth is the densest, and it's the most material. It's the slowest. In your abdomen, in most traditions and in the 7 chakra system, your abdomen is where the like fire is. It's like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to feel about it? This is that fast energy, right? And it's going to shine out from you from that place. And so that's the element of fire. In your heart chakra, you're emotional. This is where you feel the things. This is where the love is, right? And this is the very clearly the water element. And then in your throat chakra, now I'm losing it. Oh, yeah. And your throat chakra is the air element because it moves quickly. It can carry information. You can shine that out. And your throat chakra is very much for that, right? Like we talk about like speaking your truth and letting that information out and saying it clearly, being honest. And that's that air element. It has all that information and it can go quickly. And then in your head is the ether or the spirit element of the 5th element, which is, of course, aligned again. Like this is where we connect with source, this is where we get our messages. And this is our crown chakra, receives the blessings of heaven and all of that. It's just so it's in such perfect alignment. And they even talk about different sorts of like practices that you can do with each of those in alignment with those elements to make that energy center much more clear, much more in alignment, freer. You can release traumas and like damp or dark energy from those places. And so I just think it's so fascinating. I really love this 5 chakra system and the 5 elements that go along with it. And again, it doesn't conflict with any of the other systems. It's just a way of focusing in on those, you know, if that serves you, if it helps you.
Yeah, there's so much more to human well-being and health than just like eating right and exercise. You know, that's all I used to think. You just eat right and exercise, you'll be good. But there's so many other things you can do to like just cleanse your energy, make you feel better, make you perform better, just make everything about your life and your existence better. Besides, you know, just diet and exercise. So many spiritual things that you were just talking about, tapping into those and knowing how it works and how it all works with the energies of the cosmos and everything. And there's no limits to probably how much you could better yourself, right?
Right. And like we were talking about earlier, these are the ways of getting your own spiritual skills and abilities to be more present in your life, is these exact sorts of things, the practices they're describing in this book and those awarenesses we were just talking about of your energy centers and, you know, removing the blockage that's already in there. Like, and they're in there as traumas and as emotional, you know, clusters and as like mental concepts that are not helpful actually. And they actually come out physically too, right? My physical body has reacted to spiritual experiences. And you've probably had this happen too, where you're like, oh, wow, like I didn't realize either that my health, my illness was being manifested because of this spiritual or emotional blockage, or that when I healed this and let it out, my body like, you know, I had like a rash or something. People will tell me like, why did I get like a rash or this pain or whatever after we did this thing together? And I'm like, oh, that was your body healing. Actually, we release these old traumas and old illnesses and, you know, toxins and things that we store in our energetic body and our physical body. And when we release them, it doesn't feel that good in the moment. Just like when you are like something triggers you and you start crying, you're really hurt and angry, it doesn't feel good at all. At the same time, if you let it out and you let it release, it feels way better afterwards. And it's just like cleansing, right? We do this like a juice cleanse or the master cleanse or something. And you're like, oh my God, why does my head hurt so bad? And I like feel nauseous and I have like this muscle spasms or whatever. It's because that's what your body's releasing. It finally has the time, the space, the care, the love to release it. And there it goes. And it's not super fun. And I've had people tell me like, oh, you should be more responsible because you just tell people like start meditating. And then some people meditate and they have it triggers them and they really, go into their trauma. And I'm like, yeah, that's great though. Like, I think that's great. We have this programmed into us that we should avoid discomfort and we should avoid pain at all costs. Right. And we equally have it in the spiritual world where people are like, oh, it's all love and light and everything. And like, I'm so ascended. I'm so good. And really it's like, no, we have pain. We have suffering. The world is full of it. Like we can't pretend our way out of that. We actually have to go through it. And it's the same for trauma with me. You got to get uncomfortable sometimes. You got to release it for it to get better.
Yes, 100%. Now, another talking point you have here is the Sai Baba story. I've never heard of this. What is this?
This is something that happened to me a handful of years ago, and it keeps coming up recently. So I keep wanting to share it with people because I think it's important right now. And basically what happened was I was in a place and I was hanging out with someone who suddenly was like, I have to go somewhere for 6 hours and you can't come. And I didn't have a car. And I was like, oh, I mean, thanks, I guess. But so I was like, well, whatever, I'm going to make the best of this being stuck in this place with like nothing to do. And so for the first time in my life, I looked on, I think it's like Facebook events or something. It's like what's happening around you on Facebook. And so I looked on that. I was like, I don't know, maybe there's like a farmer's market or something. I could go like wander around for a while. And there was this event and it was only a mile away from where I was. And it was like a spiritual convention. And I was like, that's probably going to be really lame, but I'll just go. It's something to kill time. So I wandered over to this spiritual convention. And it was $20 to get in. And I was very upset about that. I was like, this is expensive. Like, but whatever. So I went in and there's all these booths, there's crystals and there's aura readers and there's all this stuff. And I'm like, most of this is probably garbage and whatever, but I'll just look and play around. And I walked up to this one booth and I saw this book behind this guy in his booth. And I like triggered me. I was like, whoa, I dreamed of that book last night. And he was like, oh, it's for you, and handed it to me. And I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I should buy it, right? I guess if I dreamed about it, I should probably buy it. So I was like, well, how much is it? He's like, no, I was told to bring this for someone and that it would be for them and it's you. And I was like, that's weird, but I'll take it, I guess. Cause it's really weird that I had this dream of this book. So apparently I'm supposed to read this book, and thank you very much for bringing it. And like, how bizarre. And we started talking. And he was showing me his stuff. He sold little orgone pendants, which I now do, which I would have never thought that would happen, but that's what has happened since then. And so I got a little pendant from him, and he was like, you should come to my talk later. I'm just going to be talking about like reflexology and different things that we can all do to keep ourselves like clearer and better and whatever. And he's super down to earth guy, which I love. Again, I'm like, most of this stuff, I'm like looking at it with this critical eye and, but he was like, his hair was like messy. He like had just like a stained t-shirt on and he was like swearing. And I was like, I love you. Like, you are awesome because you're honest. And I love that. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go to your talk. Like, I'll be here that long, kill some more time. Wandered around, did some other stuff, went to his talk. He's talking about reflexology. Like he said, he's talking about some other things. And again, he's just super down to earth. And I like love him. And there's like only like 12 people maybe at this talk. There's not a lot of people in the room. And he's sharing or whatever. And then this light comes through the wall. And I'm used to this because, again, I've had like many, many thousands of experiences with them in the sky at night, in the sky during the day, and in rooms and in all sorts of situations. And they're all, these what some people would call UFOs, and I call now our spiritual ancestors. And sometimes I call them wogies because that's a Native American term for the light beings, and all sorts of names. But that came through the wall. And I'm always, sometimes I feel like other people can see them and sometimes I feel like they can't. And I don't think it's about their skill. I think it's about how aware they are in the moment or how much they're paying attention, right? Or how much they're open to. I don't think it's like some people just have the ability and others don't. I just think like I'm often just looking around in complete, like, I don't know what's out here. I don't have preconceived notions. And other people are like, I'm at a talk and we're learning reflexology, and that's the only thing happening right now. And so they're just not as open to it. Well, so I see this light come through the wall, and I'm like, I don't know, does anyone else see it? I'm like looking around. It doesn't really seem like anyone does. And I'm like, well, they're either all so advanced that this also doesn't really blow their mind, like it doesn't blow my mind, or no one else sees it. It's one of those two things. So we'll just see what happens. And it kind of just hovers for a while, and then it goes and it plops into this guy's head. And when it pops into his head, he kind of shakes, and then he starts talking it's still his voice and his body, but it's different. Like I can tell that it's different. Like there's a different tone or cadence or rhythm or whatever. I'm like, weird. Okay, so this is the first time I've seen this in my life. I've seen those things, those lights. I've never seen them come into somebody's head and start talking through them. So I'm like, wow. So I'm like trying to memorize everything this thing is saying, because I'm like, what the hell is happening right now? Very, very weird. And he starts talking about how soon times would become very, very rough and difficult, and that it would be very hard for us to remember the light. And it would seem to us like the light had gone out of the world. And he said, the light never goes out of the world, however, and this is part of what we have like come here for. This is part of what this time is about, is proving to us that no amount of darkness or destruction could cancel the light or get rid of the light. I'm obviously paraphrasing it. He's saying it like way better than I can remember. And he says this time of darkness will start in 2022, which I don't know if anyone is noticing, but we're in 2022 now. So I've been waiting for this year for some time, and I don't know, so far it's pretty okay. But ever since then, this happened a few years ago, I've been, wondering like, what is maybe going to happen? And he says, don't worry. Like I said, the light will still be there. And he said, and it will grow and grow despite the darkness growing. And by 2033, we'll be through it, and it'll be done forever. And that Christ consciousness will fully return on this plane. And he said, and I will always be with you through all of that. And then it popped out of his head, the light, and the guy shook. And he said, that wasn't me. That was Sai Baba. I had never heard of Sai Baba before. And I looked around again to see, like, is anyone else freaking out right now? Like, what just happened to us here? And I think that they thought that he was performing a speech that Sai Baba had given at some point. Not that Sai Baba was literally like in his head, like speaking through him. I think they just didn't understand what had just happened fully. And The light left. It left the room. And he started talking about like, okay, well, since Sai Baba was here, let me tell you about Sai Baba. And he started teaching us about Sai Baba. And so I learned who Sai Baba was, but I was also like, was that like prophecy? Has that always been the year? Did Sai Baba just come in? Is he coming in people all around the world saying like, hey, by the way, it's 2022. That's the date. Like, everybody get ready. Or I'm not sure. But I just feel like here we are. And it does seem like it's possible that this is the start of some pretty great darkness. And it's somewhat hopeful to hear that 2033, it's not that far away. It's kind of a long time, but like it ends. There will be an
depends.
End to it, right?
It could be longer. Depends on how dark the darkness is.
And that's why I'm like, what? Why did it have to be 10 years? Couldn't it be like 3 years? I could deal with 3 years. Like 10, 11? That's a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. But I just have this feeling, and I've been, I had a dream not last weekend, at the weekend before. And I was, again, this is very, very interesting because I was at the same spiritual fair, but halfway across the country. And now I'm a presenter at it and a person with a booth. Which I never would have thought at the time at all. So like come full circle.
Crazy. Yeah.
It was really crazy. And totally by accident, all of it. And then you're around all of these people. Some of them are shills or, like hucksters or whatever. And a bunch of them are not. There's a bunch of psychics there. And there's a bunch of healers there. There's a bunch of crystals and orgone. Like, this place is like packed with energy. So I already have like really significant dreams, and my guides come and share things with me and stuff. But that night, after I had been in this place all day, this past couple weekends, I had like these really intense, nonstop, like just spiritual message dreams. And so one of them was saying like, this place we're in, this time we're in, there's a reason that it's happening. Again, like we said, there's a reason for the darkness. And they were reminding me of that yin yang symbol. And they're like, it's not just like a nice thing to say, like, yeah, there's balance in all things, but it's showing you like that little speck of white that's in the dark side Like it's that white and that bright. I keep doing the 666 symbol on accident. Like,
Illuminati confirmed.
Yeah, right. Not trying. But that little white part, it's that white because it's been crystallized by being surrounded by everything that it is not. Right. So it's had the opportunity to look at literally every single thing that exists and say, here's all the things I am not. And so it's like super pure. And it was saying like, that's what we are doing here too. Not just ourselves. Like, I'm not like, oh, I want to make Lindsey really pure, but that collectively we're making like the light really pure because we're seeing just how dark it could be and that we are not that. It's crystallizing us into our purest, highest form. And I'm like, that we can get behind, right? That could take 11 years. Like,
yeah, probably so. Well, yeah, this is a great thing to close on. You also write about our job during the apocalypse. Now, me personally, I go to bed every night feeling like I still need to do something. There's like something, some kind of work, something that's going on, and this is every day, every night, no matter how hard I work, no matter how many shows a day I'm doing, no matter what I'm doing productive, I still feel like there's some more shit I got to do, and it's perpetual. I don't know. Is this what you may be referring to as our jobs during the apocalypse, some kind of spiritual job that we are nagging at our souls?
Yes. And I love that you're having that experience because this is what most people who are coming to me recently are saying. They're like, what am I supposed to do? What's my job right now? I know something's happening and I just need to know what to do. And it's not a cop out and it's not untrue to say you're already doing it. You're already doing it. You just being here and just having that knowledge and that light inside of you is literally your only job. You're going to, at every moment you're supposed to hold that light and other people will feel it and see it. And that's all we have to do. It doesn't have to be this great, huge, triumphant. You don't have to like climb the tower and slay the dragon. Like you just have to be exactly who you are, exactly where you are, doing that you're doing. You're already doing it. Just like we said at the very beginning, right? I was like always doing this actually. And that's all we need. All humans need is to remember their connection to that light and just be it and live it. You don't have to make it some huge thing some huge production or some great transformation you undergo. You'll go through transformation as you're doing it. You'll grow and your capacity might widen. You know, you may have like new projects that you come up with, and those are all supposed to be too, but it doesn't have to be this thing that you like fret over. We're all fretting over it. Like, I'm not doing enough. No, you are doing enough. You are, just by being you and just by knowing that connection and just by holding it.
Wow, that makes me feel a little better. At least I'm doing something.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bunch of people that I know personally that are experiencing around them this awakening. They're seeing people going through this, but I think there's a lot of people denying their own spark, kind of scared to come into their own, scared to do the job that they know they're supposed to be doing for whatever reason, indoctrination, fear of being, not being supported or shunned or whatever. I think that's a big thing that's occurring right now, and the pushback is to keep people going in that direction. The mainstream wants people to be scared to come into their own, so they don't, because the more the people that awaken and come to their own, the better chance we have of, wiping the floor with these elite motherfuckers, right?
Right. That's what I love about it is like you can feel it. Like when you're walking around somewhere and everybody's terrified, you're like, this feels really bad. And when you're walking around somewhere and everyone's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not gonna bow in fear to this. Like, I'm just living my life. You can feel that too. And you're like, oh, that feels really nice, actually. So all these people who are, feeling afraid and going back into the mainstream and diving back into that and resisting the call to live in alignment with their souls and their truth, those people are feeling it too. And this is what I'm saying, why this is our job, is just to be that and live that. And sometimes it might be heroic. You might be in a situation where you are asked to like step out in front of the line of people and yell something or whatever, right? But you might not. It can look a million different ways, and all of them are valuable because it really is. We're all sensitive. We all can feel it. It's like a resonance, and we can vibrate with it or we cannot vibrate with it. And the more opportunities we have to vibrate with it, the better. So all we have to do is just be that vibration and just hold it. And again, people are like, oh, well, that's a cop out. I'm like, no, because look at you and look at you. You're still motivated to do even more. You think about this, you're like, what else could I do? That's part of your light that you're bringing, right? Is to continuously look for more ways to do it. It's not something you had to try. It's just automatically a part of who you are. And all of us have that natural inclination to do whatever it is that is actually our highest service and presence here.
Right on. Very well said, Lindsey. That was excellent information. Tell everybody where they can get your book, find out more about you, website, social media, all the good stuff.
It is The Key of Transformational Healing. You can get it signed from me if you want my little inscription. I usually channel a little message to you and then send it off to you. And you can get that at rogueways.org, or you can get it on Amazon or other places where books are sold in massive quantities. And so you can get it any of those places. I do have the digital download for people who like e-readers. And so you can also get that from my site. And I'm sure it'll be an audiobook at some point. I have people now who are helping me create my books into audiobooks, and that is really exciting. So all of them, the first one's going to be Sine Curve, the fictional novel, and then its sequel, Earth, A Trough in Time. And then we're going to get into the more directly channeled manuals like All Endings Are Beginnings and The Key of Transformational Healing. But they're all available in those places. And rogueways.org is the best place to find all the things that I do. So anyone can go there and check out all the stuff there.
Sweet. Lindsey, that was excellent, and we will, of course, be talking again on day 0 and for many more instances in the future to come. So, as usual, excellent stuff.
Thank you. So pleasurable to be here with you.
Yes, until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will once again be talking tomorrow.